Hello, 7th graders. Mr. Dayton here. I'm about to read to you pages 128 and 129 out of the textbook and questions 1 through 8 on page 129. So let's get right into it with page 128. The question we are attempting to answer today in our lesson is, what are viruses? Again, this is page 128. Our objective: describe the structure of a virus. Key terms: virus, a non-living particle made up of a piece of nucleic acid covered with a protein. Next one is capsid. Capsid is the protein covering of a virus. Okay, and then the third key term is bacteriophage. That is a virus that infects bacteria. That's bacteriophage. Okay, first paragraph, first section we get into is titled viruses. A virus is a non-living particle. It is very different from a living cell. A virus does not have any organelles. Viruses do not grow, take in food, or make waste. A virus is just a piece of nucleic acid covered with an outer coat of protein called a capsid. The capsid makes up most of the virus and gives it its shape. Some viruses are round. Others look like long rods, like the one in figure 5-11, and I'll show you that in a little bit. This virus attacks and destroys bacteria. A virus that infects bacterial cells is called a bacteriophage. Viruses depend on living cells in order to reproduce. So here is figure 5-11. This is a bacteriophage and what it looks like. So you have your tail. The whole thing is in a capsid, in the nucleic acid covered with that capsid. All right. That's the bacteriophage. Next section is titled Reproduction in Viruses. Even though they are not living, viruses are like living cells in one important way. They are able to reproduce more viruses. However, viruses can reproduce more viruses only inside a living cell. Continue on. Scientists first learned about reproduction in viruses by studying bacteriophages. Figure 5-12 shows a bacteriophage reproducing. When a bacteriophage attacks a bacterial cell, it uses special proteins in its tail fibers to attach itself to the surface of the cell. The virus then gives off enzymes, a type of chemical. The enzymes make a hole in the cell wall of the bacterium. The genetic material of the virus is injected into the cell through this hole. Once inside, the virus takes control of the cell. The genetic material from the virus directs the cell to make new virus parts. The parts form new viruses. The cell membrane bursts, releasing the new viruses. The new viruses attack other cells. So here is the whole stage, all the stages of this, a bacteriophage. A virus, this is figure 5-12 that was referred to earlier, and there is a view under a microscope here, so I'll zoom out a little bit. So a virus first attaches itself to the cell of a bacterium, then the virus kind of creates a hole and injects genetic material into the cell. You can see that going in there. Number 3, the genetic material in there directs that cell, now says, hey cell, you need to make more virus parts. And those parts are formulated into new viruses, okay? And as you can see, there are newly formed viruses here. And then step 5, the cell membrane bursts, releasing those new viruses out into the organism, and then they'll be on to infect more bacteria. All right, here is a nice little photograph of bacteriophages attacking a bacterium right there. All right, let's move on. A virus can enter a cell and remain inactive or dormant. However, when activated, the virus can cause disease. Have you ever had a cold sore? A cold sore is caused by a virus that may remain dormant in your cells for years. When viruses leave the cell is often destroyed. This is what causes some infections in people with a cold or flu virus. Other kinds of viruses reproduce differently. For example, when the HIV virus takes over a cell, it can force the cell to release new viruses gradually by budding without causing the cell to burst. Okay. Moving on, next paragraph is titled Classifying Viruses. Because viruses do not have all the characteristics of living things, they are not classified in the 5-kingdom system. In our case, we talk about the 6-kingdom system. Still, viruses are not included. They don't have all the characteristics of living things. Scientists used to classify viruses based on which type of organism they infected. For example, there were plant viruses, animal viruses, and viruses that infect bacteria. Today, scientists classify these viruses based on their shape and structure. There are 3 basic characteristics used to classify viruses. One is the structure of their capsid. Another characteristic is the type of nucleic acid they contain. Viruses can be DNA viruses or RNA viruses. The last characteristic is the way in which the virus reproduces. Okay. Sometimes the common name of a virus, is based on the disease that it causes. For example, the virus that causes the plant disease, tobacco mosaic disease, is called the tobacco mosaic virus. The common name for the virus that causes rabies is the rabies virus. So typically classified by their shape, structure, DNA or RNA, and the way they reproduce, but you may hear common names like the rabies virus and others. Okay, and then let's move on to the questions. Ready? Here we go. Number 1 says a virus is a piece of blank covered with a protein coat. A virus is a piece of blank covered with a protein coat. Remember that you need to be answering these in complete sentences in your science notebook. Complete sentences. Scientists classify viruses, number 2. Scientists classify viruses based on their shape and blank. Scientists classify viruses based on their shape and blank. Number 3, a virus that infects a bacterial cell is called a blank. A virus that infects a bacterial cell is called a blank. Number 4, viruses can reproduce more viruses only inside blank cells. Viruses can reproduce more viruses only inside blank cells. Number 5, scientists first learned about reproduction in viruses by studying blank. Scientists first learned about reproduction in viruses by studying blank. Number 6, you need to contrast. How does a virus differ from a living cell? How does a virus differ from a living cell? So you might say a virus differs from a living cell by, and list all the ways. Hypothesize, number 7. Why is it difficult to classify viruses? Why is it difficult to classify viruses? It is difficult to classify viruses because, and then insert your reason. And then number 8, sequence. That means put in order, list the steps of viral reproduction. So if you go back and look, you should be able to see those steps pretty easily. All right, that is all we have for pages 128 and 129 and questions 1 through 8. Good luck, everybody.